There comes a time, often in the later seasons of life, when words lose their urgency. Where once there was a hunger to be understood, to be heard, to be validated, now there is peace in not explaining. Silence is no longer a prison, it becomes a sanctuary. You see, when you're young, the ego wants to shout, it needs to prove, to display, to win approval. But as the years pass, the soul begins to speak more than the ego ever could. And the soul has no need for applause. It doesn't clamor. It listens and it watches. And in that sacred stillness, truth becomes clearer. Silence is misunderstood by those who haven't met themselves deeply. They think silence is defeat. They think it's retreat. But true silence, the kind that comes from wisdom, is a sign you've made peace with your own complexity. You no longer argue to be right. You no longer perform to be accepted. You've stopped needing to be seen to know your own worth. The wise become silent not because they have less to say, but because they understand what is worth saying and what is not. They know that words, once released, are no longer yours. They can be misinterpreted, twisted, used, and so discretion becomes power, stillness becomes strength. This silence is not emptiness. It is full of understanding, memory, pattern, depth. It is the silence of someone who has looked into their own shadow, walked through personal chaos, and returned with gold in their hands. That gold is not shared lightly. It's not tossed into conversations to impress or to win. It's held carefully, shared sparingly, given only when it serves the transformation of another. There is also a silence that grows from knowing how little control we truly have. The older you get, the more you recognize how much in life is shaped by mystery, by forces we cannot see, predict, or master. And when you witness that long enough, the need to narrate everything, to have an opinion about every storm, fades. You become more reverent, more watchful. You speak when the moment calls, not when your ego demands. In the silence of old age, there is dignity, there is grace, and yes, there is mourning too. For lost years, for people who never understood you, for the self you once were. But even that mourning doesn't need to be shouted. It's carried inward like a sacred flame. The world mistakes loudness for confidence, but true confidence is quiet, it's rooted, it does not demand, it simply is. And the man or woman who has embraced the silence of age has stopped needing to convince others of anything. They have returned to themselves. And that, more than any speech or proclamation, is where real power begins. This silence isn't weakness, it's evolution. It is the echo of someone who has found meaning not in noise, but in stillness. There are certain truths that live in the deepest chambers of the soul, truths shaped by regret. Regret is not just a memory, it's a wound with a voice. It speaks in silence, in late hours, in the unspoken weight we carry. It is the shadow of the life we didn't live, the words we didn't say, the moments we lost to fear, pride, or ignorance. But regret, though universal, is profoundly personal. It is not meant to be laid bare in every conversation, exposed to every gaze, not because it is shameful, but because the world is rarely gentle with those who bleed openly. Regret, when shared carelessly, becomes currency in the hands of the unworthy. They may listen, but not to understand. They listen to measure, to compare, to judge, to categorize you not by who you are, but by what you did. There is a dangerous myth that says opening every wound is the path to healing. But true healing does not come from exposure, it comes from integration. You do not escape regret by broadcasting it. You transcend it by understanding what it revealed about you, by what it taught you about your values, your limits, your soul's hidden architecture. That kind of growth is sacred. It demands reflection, not applause. When you are young, you may be tempted to confess your regrets in the hope of being comforted, forgiven, or seen. But as you grow, you realize not every ear is safe. Not every heart is ready to hold what you carry. And so you become more careful, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You begin to recognize that your inner life is not a performance, it is a sanctuary. And some things are too meaningful to be made public. Regret, at its core, is a map. It shows you where your soul ached for something higher, something truer. It reflects your missed encounters with authenticity. And if you're paying attention, it can guide you. If not backward, then inward. But only if you treat it with the reverence it deserves. Sharing regret with someone who hasn't earned your trust is like placing your most fragile artifact in careless hands. They might look at it, they might nod, but they will never truly see it. And often they'll reduce it, boil it down to a mistake, a failure, a flaw. They'll miss the deeper message, the psychological weight, the transformation that regret quietly initiated within you. So, in your later years, you protect your regrets, not because you're hiding, but because you've learned their value. You've sat with them long enough to understand that they are part of your personal myth, your unique psychological journey. They don't need fixing or forgiving from others. They need honoring, integrating, and sometimes simply witnessing in silence. Not all sorrow needs an audience, and not all pain seeks pity. Some truths are too sacred to be shared. Let regret shape you, but not define you. Let it teach you, but not expose you. Let it be yours, fully, quietly, powerfully. There is a strange and subtle energy that surrounds money. It is more than paper or numbers. It is projection, identity, shadow. In society, money carries meaning far beyond its practical use. It becomes a mirror for people's deepest fears, desires, and insecurities. And that is precisely why, as you grow older, you must learn to guard the truth of your financial life, not out of greed, but out of self-preservation. When you speak openly about your wealth, whether it is modest or substantial, you awaken something in others that is rarely visible on the surface. Envy is a quiet force. It rarely announces itself. It smiles, it congratulates, but beneath the surface, it watches, it compares, it schemes. The envious do not want your success. They want the illusion of it, without the journey, without the sacrifice. They do not celebrate you, they compete with you, often in silence and sometimes in subtle sabotage. Manipulation also grows in the presence of financial exposure. When people know what you have, they begin to see you not as a person, but as a resource. They calculate, they adjust their language, their approach, their motives. Suddenly, generosity is not seen as virtue, but as obligation. Boundaries are tested, expectations are planted like seeds, and slowly your relationships begin to shift, not around truth, but around what others want from you. Keeping your financial life private is not a matter of secrecy. It is an act of psychological sovereignty. It is a refusal to let your material world define your emotional world, because money is not the soul's measure. It is simply a tool, a symbol, a servant, not a master. And those who do not see it that way will never understand your deeper value. There is also something sacred about the invisible. What others cannot see, they cannot control. Your stability, your savings, your struggles. These are part of your inner architecture. Not everything needs to be shared, especially in a world addicted to image, where perception is often more important than truth. Silence protects clarity. Privacy nourishes peace. As age ripens your vision, you begin to see the patterns. You remember the moments when sharing too much invited the wrong energy. You recall how openness was mistaken for weakness and how transparency became exploitation. And so you learn. You no longer feel the need to prove. You no longer need to explain. Your worth is no longer measured in what others know, but in what you preserve for yourself. There is deep power in financial discretion. It keeps you rooted in your own center, unshaken by outside expectations, untouched by manipulative agendas. You remain the master of your own domain, not because you built walls, but because you built wisdom. And wisdom understands this. Not everything valuable should be visible. What you keep hidden isn't a secret, it's a sanctuary. What you protect isn't just your money, it's your peace. The future, in its purest form, is a living symbol. It waits in the unseen, in the quiet corridors of intention and imagination. When you envision your next move, you are not merely planning, you are summoning something from the unconscious into the world of form. That process is delicate, sacred, and it demands protection. To speak your next move aloud, especially too early, is to risk weakening it. Every word spoken about a plan sends its energy outward, dispersing it into the noise of opinion, judgment, and projection. What begins as pure inner fire can quickly become diluted by the attention of others. Their doubts become weights, their envy becomes static, even their praise, though well-intended, creates expectation that can distort your course. The unspoken plan carries a different energy. It gathers strength in silence. In silence, you remain in communion with the deeper currents of your psyche, with the instinct, the intuition, the inner compass that guides you, not through approval, but through alignment. You are not performing your vision, you are becoming it. There is something ancient in the act of hidden movement. Like the roots of a tree growing in darkness, your plan must first take hold in the depths before it appears above the surface. Announcing it too soon is like tearing up the soil to show your progress. The growth halts, the roots are exposed, the mystery is broken. Often we feel compelled to share our goals, to gain support, to feel seen, to make them real. But realness is not born in conversation, it is born in action. And the most meaningful movements of the soul do not ask to be seen, they ask to be lived quietly, devotedly, without the need for validation. Moreover, the world reacts to your direction. The more others know, the more they shape, interfere, resist, or try to align with it for their own ends. Manipulation doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it comes with smiles, with questions, with advice. But all of it, if you're not careful, can twist the path just enough to pull you off center. As you grow older, you begin to understand the value of stillness, not just of body, but of intention. There is a certain power in becoming unreadable, not out of deception, but out of discipline. You move like water, unseen, adaptable, unstoppable. The steps you take are known only by you and by the quiet voice within you that still believes in what you're becoming. Let your results speak, let your presence speak, let your transformation reveal itself in silence. Plans shouted into the world rarely survive its noise, but plans nurtured in the sanctuary of stillness grow wild and true. You are not hiding your moves, you are preserving their purity. And in a world obsessed with exposure, secrecy is not secrecy. It is self-respect. What is yours until it is done. Family is the first mirror we ever look into. It reflects not only who we are, but who we were expected to be. Within that mirror, there is light, warmth, and memory, but also tension, misunderstanding, and pain. Every family holds its own mythology, its shared patterns and roles, passed silently from one generation to the next. And within that mythology, conflict is inevitable. But how we hold that conflict, how we contain it, determines whether it becomes a source of healing or a source of shame. When you expose family wounds to the outside world, you risk turning sacred pain into spectacle. What was once a private struggle becomes a public story. But stories, once told beyond their rightful space, no longer belong to the people who lived them. They are interpreted, judged, reshaped by those who were never part of the experience. Outsiders do not carry the emotional weight of your bloodline. They don't see the invisible loyalties, the generational echoes, the buried traumas. They only see the surface, and they respond to the surface. There is a profound psychological need for containment. Just as the psyche needs boundaries to remain whole, so does a family system. When conflicts are broadcast, the container breaks. The healing process is interrupted, because true healing requires trust, vulnerability, and the safety of sacred space. That space is not found in the court of public opinion. It is found around the dinner table, in the late-night conversation, in the apology that trembles but still rises. That kind of healing can only take place where the wound was born, within the family itself. You may think that speaking about your family's faults will bring clarity or justice. And sometimes it does, but more often it brings distortion. Others begin to define your identity through your family's failures. And worse, they begin to define your family by its brokenness. But a family is more than its dysfunction. It is a system of stories. Some dark, yes, but also full of love, sacrifice, survival. When you share the shadow, you must also be willing to carry the light. But most people only want the shadow. They want the drama, not the truth. With age, you realize that silence is not denial, it is discernment. You no longer feel the urge to expose, you feel the urge to protect, not to excuse, but to preserve something larger than the moment of conflict, the dignity of lineage, the potential for reconciliation, the mystery of shared blood. You carry the understanding that what is unresolved within the family may be part of a deeper pattern, ancestral, psychological, spiritual. And patterns like these cannot be resolved through gossip. They require presence, depth, patience. To keep family conflict within the family is not weakness. It is the beginning of maturity. It is the refusal to let pain become entertainment. It is the choice to say, this is ours to understand. This is ours to repair. Not everything broken needs an audience. Some things only need silence, time, and the courage to heal where the wound began. Emotional pain is not merely a reaction to life's events. It is a doorway, a descent, a summons into the deeper layers of the self. When we suffer, we come into contact with something raw, unfiltered, and profoundly revealing. Pain strips away illusion. It tears through the masks we wear and confronts us with the vulnerable essence of our being. That kind of truth is sacred, and sacred things must be protected. To share your emotional pain is to offer someone access to your inner world, not the surface emotions, but the core, the unresolved grief, the ancient fear, the hidden wound from childhood that still echoes through your adult decisions. But not everyone is ready to receive such truth, and not everyone should. The soul does not open to just any gaze. When you share your pain with someone who hasn't earned your trust, you give them power. That power is not always abused openly. Sometimes it is dismissed quietly. You speak your heart, and they change the subject. You cry, and they grow uncomfortable. Or worse, they listen, but they do not hear. They reduce what is deep to something small, something ordinary. And in that moment, the pain is no longer just yours, it is misunderstood, mislabeled, and diminished. There is a loneliness that follows such moments, a deeper hurt layered over the original wound. Because when emotional truth is mishandled, it recoils. The psyche learns to retreat, to hide, to protect itself from further betrayal. And over time, you begin to understand, not every ear deserves your story. Not every presence offers safety. True trust is not built on charm or proximity. It is built on silence honored, emotion held without judgment, space offered without demand. A trustworthy soul does not rush to fix you. They do not steal your narrative and make it about themselves. They witness, they remain. They allow your pain to exist without smothering it in advice or turning it into spectacle. These are rare individuals. You know them by how light your chest feels in their presence. You know them by how your pain doesn't harden, but softens. With age, the need to confess everything diminishes. You stop speaking to be heard and begin choosing silence to preserve meaning. You realize that emotional pain is not a performance. It is an initiation. It marks the threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. And initiations are never meant for the crowd. They are meant for the circle, for the few, for the worthy, for those who have walked through their own darkness and emerged not with answers, but with humility. So you guard your emotional pain, not out of fear, but out of reverence. You hold it close until the right person, or perhaps the right moment within yourself, calls it forth. Because healing does not come from exposure, it comes from sacred connection. And sacred connection is never rushed, never forced, never careless. It is earned. There are parts of the self that are not meant to be shared, not because they are shameful, but because they are holy. They are pieces of your inner life, shaped in silence, born through suffering, self-realization, or personal revelation. These are not secrets in the ordinary sense, not petty concealments or convenient lies. These are soul-kept truths, intimate to the core of who you are. To speak them carelessly would be to profane something sacred. In the modern world, there is an obsession with transparency. We are told that everything must be voiced, explained, dissected. But the deeper self, the soul behind the mask, does not thrive in constant exposure. It needs darkness to grow, mystery to breathe. Like seeds gestating beneath the earth, our most essential truths develop out of sight. And it is this concealment, this conscious inwardness, that protects the most vital parts of us from being torn apart by misunderstanding. Not all silence is suppression. Sometimes silence is protection. Sometimes the secrets you keep are the very shield that guards your wholeness. They hold together the fragile architecture of a life that has been through fire, storm, and shadow. And only you can understand what those secrets mean. They are coded in your language, your experience, your dreams. No one else can interpret them without distorting them. There are moments in life where you are called to choose: speak and be exposed, or remain silent and stay sovereign. The wise know that expression is not always freedom. At times, it can be a trap. Once spoken, a sacred truth no longer lives in your soul alone. It enters the world of others, where it is analyzed, judged, manipulated, or diluted. Even those who love you may not see it clearly. They may try to fix it, explain it, reshape it, but sacred things are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be held. And so, as the years pass and you come into deeper contact with your true self, you begin to understand the value of inner privacy. You carry your secrets not as weight, but as protection. They are your armor, forged from the trials you've survived, the insights you've earned, and the choices you've made in silence. They shield your energy, your clarity, your power. To the outside world, you may appear guarded, but within you are intact. Because some truths, if spoken, would weaken the very strength they gave you. Some wounds, if exposed, would bleed again. And some revelations are too sacred to belong to anyone but you. There is wisdom in discretion. Not everything needs to be witnessed to be real. Not everything needs to be said to be understood. In fact, the most profound parts of your life will never be fully explained, and they shouldn't be. They were given to you for your transformation, not for others' consumption. You do not carry sacred secrets as a burden, you carry them as a shield. And behind that shield, the truest version of you is free. Certainly, here's a conclusion that flows naturally from the depth and tone of the full speech, maintaining the introspective and symbolic style. So in the quiet hours of life, when the applause has faded, when the world no longer demands your performance, you begin to see more clearly. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. Privacy is not isolation, it is power. And discretion is not fear, it is wisdom earned through fire. In old age, you are no longer tasked with proving your worth or explaining your journey. You are asked only to guard what matters, to protect your soul's architecture from unnecessary disturbance, to honor your inner life, not by exposing it, but by tending to it with reverence. Let them wonder. Let them assume. You owe no one your scars, your intentions, or your depth. What is real in you does not need to be spoken. It radiates through how you walk, how you look into the eyes of others, how you remain still when the world clamors for noise. Keep your secrets, keep your center, and in that stillness, you will find what most spend their lives chasing: peace, integrity, and the unshakable strength of a soul that knows itself.